Hi guys, I'm Sinjin Craner from Agrarian. I'm really sorry I'm not able to be with you guys today because I had news of a family event which I need to attend, which is preventing me from being with you this afternoon in Wellington. But I like to honour my commitments and promises, so I have given Ron and the Tama team a proposal and a presentation which we're going to fly through in the next half an hour here on which I pre-recorded for you. I've kind of done a little bit more by way of compensation for me not being there with you all. I've packed a lot of ideas and insights that we've been able to gather in the last decade working in this industry. So I hope there's lots of useful, valuable content you can take away and apply to your rural businesses straight away. So the theme of the Tama conference is gearing up. And here I'm going to sort of help you make your maximize your marketing dollars. I'm going to share with you a lot of what we've learned from others. We've spent been privileged and fortunate enough to spend a lot of other people's money, some very big companies, and we know what works and what doesn't. And I will share that advice and those knowledge with you in the next half an hour. So I'm just going to share my screen here, and what we'll do is I'll kick into the presentation, and I will sort of annotate it, and you can kind of pretend I'm basically not there. Not there, I should say there. Okay, so we talked around how we want to maximize our marketing dollars, and Ron gave me a bit of a brief around how you guys are wanting to get better clarity on how to work your marketing dollars harder. So I'm going to share those in the next few slides. And I thought it would be apt to kick off with the quote from Lord Leverhulme, which a few of us will recognise: half the money I spend on advertising is wasted, and the trouble is I don't know which half. Now, I think we've probably all got quite a lot of sympathy with our mate Lord Leverhulme here. You guys are spending a lot of money on advertising, traditional, conventional advertising, or digital marketing and advertising, and you're trying to work out what's best bang for buck. So in the next few slides, we're going to address that. And it's really, I'm going to help you by putting a spotlight on we know what works and what doesn't, and help you navigate through that. So I thought it would be a very useful exercise to start with some pretty significant statistics, and just to sort of maybe assert and challenge some of the inaccurate assumptions we make. A lot of people are peddling a lot of digital marketing, and there's nothing wrong with that, but it's all about the execution. So I'll read a few of these to you. You can all read the slide here, but only 22% of customers trust online banner ads. This is from AC Nielsen, a very reputable global research company. Only 7% of organic Facebooks make it to their followers. That's verified by Facebook. Only 34% of people trust ads that are served in a search engine result, like sponsored links in Google AdWords. And less than half of the people trust ads served on Facebook or social media platforms. So I can go on and on here, but basically I found that one really interesting. 70% of people would prefer to learn about a company for an article than an ad. And I'm going to talk about why content is critical in the next few slides. Excuse me, 85% of buyers now kick off their buying process with referral, and people are 4 times more likely to buy when they're referred by a friend. So 92% of customers trust recommendation friend. This is very, really strong, and we'll talk about word of mouth and word of which mouths shortly. And then interestingly, earned media, which is like press, column inches, editorial, or word of mouth and peer recommendations, drives 4 times the brand lift as paid media, which is your traditional conventional advertising. And we know for a fact that peer-to-peer or our networks is where we head to first when we want to get assurances on our purchasing decisions. So up to 50% of purchase decisions are driven by our peers. So yeah, some pretty startling statistics to start with, but I wanted to share them with you because they are really important for us to keep in the top of the mind as we work through. Now, AC Nielsen, this is a little bit of older data, and I'm sure there'll be an update soon, but you can just see the shifts, and this sort of backs up, as you can see on the cursor here, recommendations from people I know tops up the list at 84%. So word of mouth is incredibly still the very best form of advertising you can get. Branded websites. We use Airbnb and TripAdvisor for consumer reviews and social proof. So recommendations online carry some weight here. Editorial content, which we talked about, earned media just a minute ago, high up there. Interestingly, ads on TV, then brand sponsorships. A lot of you guys will be sponsoring local, district, granular, community-led sponsorships, and that seems to be very good. Then we come down to newspaper ads, magazine ads, billboards, radios, emails, and so forth. What's interesting about this table, though, is when you start to look at online banner ads, display ads on mobiles, ads on social media, online video ads, they don't rate very well. Now, back in 2007, I think iPhone and internet was only really just kicking in, but you can see basically 6 years later, these things are not liked, and they say they can reflect really badly. Or, you know, when you're reading stuff on New Zealand Herald or interest.co.nz and a pre-roll banner comes up and all you're trying to do is read the news, it's very irritating, and that irritation is then associated with your brand. So we need to really tread very carefully. But it was a good sort of scope here to exercise to see where things are being trusted most by customers. So again, word of mouth, very high, online banners, very, very low. Now, I often talk to all my clients around educating them. I almost call them students because I'm trying to teach and share the knowledge and skills that we're learning along the way. And I'm very, very adamant that marketing, sales, and brand are codependent and interrelated disciplines. So this means they are connected, they are interconnected, and they're dependent on each other. So what I mean by that is you cannot fix one of these disciplines without fixing the others. So for instance, you can have the best marketing machine in the world generating leads for you, but a sales team that's not closing them. Or you could have the best brand in the world, but no one's actually buying. Or you could have the best sales team, but no one's believing your product is credible, trustworthy, or reputable. So this means we have to focus on all three, not one. And they work together as one system. And the analogy I kind of like to use here when I train my boys' rugby team is they need to get really proficient on practicing three disciplines, which is they might want to be passing the ball, tackling, and kicking. And it's the same here. I'm sorry to use the rugby metaphors, but it's ones we're all familiar with. It's the same with our marketing, sales, and branding systems. They all codependent, they all work together, and we cannot fix one without fixing the other. So if we want to succeed, we need to nail all three disciplines. So never think about treating one in isolation. Think about how they all connect with each other. Now, another little gem I want to share with you, which has been incredibly useful for us and useful for the clients we work with, I've tabled it as those who educate the market own the market. And what I'm saying here is that this is probably one of the single biggest, best piece of advice I could share with you guys. And it's all about out-teaching to outsell, because we don't want to outprice to sell, because it murders our margins and it sets a very dangerous pricing precedent for us. And by providing knowledge, skills, advice, information to your customers over the time, you're nurturing those leads, and you're not asking for a marriage on the first date. You are showing your intent by servicing their needs first rather than your own. And customers, subliminally and subconsciously, we're very, very quick to pick up when someone is disingenuine or not authentic and hasn't got our best interests at heart. And this is where sales can drop out so quickly. So what we're doing is we're using the power of reciprocation here, because what we can do is we can nurture leads by giving them information. We might want to educate them on how they choose their farm machinery or the size of their tractor for their new farm if they're a share milker that's taking on their first farm. There's so many things we can do here, but we really do need to out-teach to outsell. And I've always said those that educate the market own the market. And I'm going to talk to you a lot in the next few minutes around educational-based content and why that is so powerful and so important for your brands. Now, another system that I use is we talk about three types of media. Excuse me, owned, earned, and paid. And interestingly, this first one, which is where we put the priority, is often the most neglected and most underused and undervalued and underestimated. And our owned media are things like our own assets, which are our websites or a campaign microsite or an email or an email campaign software, newsletters, podcasts, webinars, white papers, workshops, social media, so many things we can go on here. The key is you own them, and they are some of your best and most prized assets in your marketing armory. And so many rural companies are neglecting to really use the potential of these owned assets. And we'll talk more about that soon. Secondly, earned media. Now, this is where you get editorial, or you might be invited to a conference or a discussion group in your district, or you get editorial, or you do a regular media column for one of your local papers, or you get invited by an affiliate or a strategic partner to come and talk to their teams. This is earned media, and you earn your media through your reputation as a trusted advisor, as a specialist, as an expert. And earned media is a very, very powerful form of communication and channel as well. And then thirdly is paid media. Now, this is the area that we're all most familiar with, which is your traditional conventional advertising, press, print, magazine, radio, outdoor, Google AdWords, Facebook ads, geo-targeted posts, all those mediums that we actually pay for. Now, there's nothing wrong with these, but often what happens is we get this wrong and we get it in reverse. And we spend all our time in paid media and we neglect earned and owned, when really the sequence should be owned media first, earned media second, and third, paid media. Now, there's nothing wrong with paid media. We often need to use it in combination, and this is why they all overlap. But ultimately, we need to remember that when we pay for our media, for instance, with Google AdWords, every click costs. So every click costs us money, and we need to make sure that we earn that right and own that right by using organic content. I'll talk about that a wee more in search engine optimization at the moment, but I'll pop into that. But with the paid media, what's useful is rural publications will be open not only to your advertising dollar, but some of your content. So rural news and the like will be very interested in you providing them with content. So don't just provide them with advertising, provide them with content. I'm going to keep talking to you about the importance of content as we go through this presentation. Now, I'll just give you an idea. I struck it a bit lucky here. I often, for some of you that know me, I do a lot of blogs on LinkedIn. And this is a blog I did at the end of last year. I ended up with about 8,500 views. And all I'm trying to say to you is that content, it's really hard to get cut through. And what I want to do is talk about this quote, which is a very favorite one of mine. And we're in very much the attention economy. We're very distracted. Some of you will be on your email. Some of you will be thinking about Paddy Gower. Some of you will be thinking about where you're going this weekend, or the rugby, or the kids, or the wife, or whatever I'm speaking. Attention is the rarest and purest form of generosity. Attention is what we seek from our customers, and we have to work really bloody hard to get it. So what we need to do is we need to kind of think about, I'm a big reader. I've just scanned very terribly a slide from, or a spread from Jeff Ross's book, Every Bastard Says No, on his 42 Below story. And he talks about at all costs get noticed. Now, we live in a very noisy, cluttered, over-communicated world. And imagine our brains are like hard disks. They can only take so much information at a time before they get full. Now, the average person gets hit up with about 500 messages a day, and only about 5, which is 1% of those messages, are likely to actually get through that filter. So I just want to sort of give you a reality here, a bit of a news flash, that none of your customers are sitting there waiting for your advertising. So I'm just going to read a little excerpt from this spread, this great book. Just talks about, inside all sorts of organizations, people are spending hours and hours and massive amount of money honing their communication material, as if consumers were out there waiting to examine every word of it. Layers of staff pour over ad. Here's the thing, no one cares. They're all doing their best to ignore it, and they've become very good at filtering out all that crap. So I think, this bloke sold this business for a lot of money. I think it's good words, it's a good reminder, and reinforces the fact that it's actually all about them. It's not about you. Unless you can show how it benefits your customers, you will not get noticed. You'll just get ignored. So, I might throw a few challenges to you guys. Is how often does a farmer really care that you've turned 50 years old and you've got a 50-year anniversary? What's in it for them? Why should they benefit? Why should they care that you've got more branches than anyone else as well? We need to sort of put this lens and this proof across why these things are important to our customers. And rather than talk about ourselves, talk about them and what benefits them. So while we've been talking, this is what's happening in a minute on the internet in terms of content. So we've had another over 4 million posts from Facebook. We've had 77,000 hours of hours of Netflix being streamed. Amazon's had another bunch of new visitors. Skype's so much going on here. The point of this diagram to prove is that content is just building and building and building. And when I define content, I think content is everything, our messages and our marketing, not just our advertising. Everything we do is content. And you can just see this massive, massive hockey stick where it's really, really hard to get cut through. So what I want to say is content is really competitive, and you need to cut through with quality, not quantity. There's a great book called Blockbusters, and most of the film studios, they make most of their money on that 80-20, on about a handful of movies that are responsible for the majority of their profits. So if you're going to create content, make sure it's a blockbuster, make sure it's quality, and just don't post crap for the sake of it's just not going to cut through, and it's just going to add to the noise, and it's just going to pollute the channel. So I promised you that I'd talk about why content is so important. There are so many business benefits to why content is important. And it positions you as the expert in your field. It alerts you to media and conference speaking opportunities. It allows you to employ that strategy of out-teach to outsell, where we talked about those that educate the market, own the market. It will qualify your prospects and your leads much more effectively, so you don't have all those tire kickers. It generates quality inbound lead traffic. It doesn't have to be geographic. Content can work while you're sleeping. It's going to attract you as an employer brand and better talent, better clients. It doesn't have any geographies. And it uses the power of reciprocation, because I'm often here in farming panels, farmers are really loath to give out their email. Well, that's because your content's not good enough. So my challenge is anyone will give their email for something if it's something that they really, really want, that they're triggered and motivated or activated about. And also, content allows you to get better search engine optimization rankings. So SEO stands for search engine optimization, which is really making sure that your words and your websites are ranking on relevance for Google. So Google has a bunch of bots which are flying around the internet at the back of your HTML pages and your websites, and they are indexing pages all the time and rolling and ranking them on relevance depending on keywords. And I'll talk to you more about SEO and that science in a minute. And it connects you and newfound work with fellow thinkers and followers. I've met so many people through my blogs and through my articles and through my social media. And also you've got this amplifier effect. So instead of one-to-one, you're one-to-many. So, the better the content, the more it's shared, commented, engaged with. So content's really, really critical. There's a lot to like on this list. And, most companies would kill to get a third of these things, but you can get all of these things if you get your content right. So the question you might be asking is, well, how do I create great content? Well, you've got to ask yourself, first of all, you've got to check your intent. Why are you creating that content? Why are you doing what you're doing? Are you serving or are you selling? And then the next question is who? Who's your tribe? Who's your target audience? Not everyone, but a specific niche of people. Are you talking to share milkers? Are you talking to agricultural women? Are you talking to next generation farmers? Are you talking to academia farmers? There are different segments, as you know, different psychographics and demographics that you can serve specifically. Then you need to think about what you can write about that is both unique, generous, and useful. And that's that whole quality versus quantity argument again, is you've got to think about what is it that someone's going to click on, someone's going to read. Would I click on it? Would I give my details? Would it get my attention? And then you need to think about where you're going to publish, which platform, which channels. Are you going to use Facebook? Are you going to use an affiliate's newsletter? Are you going to be using the local rugby club? What channels are you going to be using? Then when you're going to publish, because obviously there'll be times of the year, like now, where dairy farmers particularly are very busy calving, where you don't want to be communicating with them. So the biological farming season, timeless, relevancy, and then most importantly, how you're going to publish. Now, this is where a lot of our clients come unstuck. They really, really struggle with generating content. We can help, but you can either do it in-house or you can outsource it. So you need to think about, but most importantly, when you commit to content, you must be consistent. There's nothing worse than seeing a website that has outdated content or a news item from 2016. It's like the fish and chip shop that won the 1995 award. It's not a good look. So you need to be really, really regular and really relevant with your content. Now, another thing is big old Facebook. I think Facebook is making some massive own goals lately, and the platform's becoming less powerful. We're weaning our clients off it more and more. A lot of people buy their likes and their followers. But to be honest, most farmers we know hang out on email, not on Facebook. And this is why emails work and blogs work, because people do browse the internet, and newsletters work. We know farmers are still very big readers. We know this from all the media research. So I would say an email address is 10 times more valuable than a flaky Facebook like any day. So I would trade a Facebook like day for an email. And the reason I say that too is having your own email list is your asset. You own it. Now, you don't own your Facebook account. They can cut that account. They can shut, and you can lose your list overnight. And in a couple of cases, we've seen this happen. So we know Facebook with Cambridge Analytica and hate speech and everything else. Don't mistake Facebook as your content strategy or your digital strategy. It is not. There is so much more that you can do, and I'm going to kind of open your minds on that in the next few slides. Now, another one I want to share with you, a bit of an insight that we picked up over the years is we saw on that Nielsen table how important word of mouth is, and it is incredibly important. So many decisions now, we go to our networks first before any company because we trust those that are friends and family much more so than any company. So we know that these referrals are worth their weight in gold. We also know farmers speak to other farmers most, and that's who they listen to and believe most. So word of mouth is still very much the best form of advertising, yet it's the word of which mouths. So I'll be really clear, the word of which mouths that is even more important, because not all mouths are equal and carry the same weight. Now, not every customer is equal, we know that, and neither is their standing in their district or their rural community. So some command more weight, more mana, more respect than others. So, for instance, Tom in Tapanui is a top farmer, and we want to focus on Tom in Tapanui because he's an alpha farmer that other farmers in his district look up to, admire and respect, and most importantly follow. So Tom is a word of which mouth that we want to target, and as we know, true leaders have followers. So remember, alpha farmers and word of which mouths are very, very important. So that whole influencer strategy. Now, I've touched on influencer strategy, and I've got a lot of synonyms for those of you that know me a bit better, but I always talk about educating clients on influencing the influencers. So again, these really significant statistics show us how powerful word of mouth and recommendations from our peers are. 92% of buyers trust referrals from people they know, and 80% are influenced by friends or family. And they're 4 more times more likely to buy when referred by a friend. So these are really, really important. It's very, very much, I think we're less in the marketing business or advertising business these days. We're in the influence business of persuasion and influence. And trust is at an all-time low with a lot of companies, and a lot of corporate scandals or corrupt governments or misfabricated, misleading brand promises where people get disillusioned and fatigued, and then they turn to their friends and family as a source of trust. And we need to influence and infiltrate those reference groups. And it's really, really important we do that because they are where the gold is. And, think about when you've got a plumber or an electrician or a house cleaner, 9 out of 10 of you would have gone to your network first to find out who was much cop. And you wouldn't have gone to Google before then. And if you think about maybe new carpets or you think about double glazing, I bet you would have asked your peer group first before you went anywhere near the internet. So this influencing influences is a really important concept for us to understand. And interesting here from the Wharton School of Business, the lifetime value of a referred customer was an average 16% higher than that of a non-referred customer. So these really have an impact on your profit. Now, another thing, I've blogged about this, I've written about this, and I'm really, really hot on this, and I'll be talking at the Marketing the Rural Sector Conference on this very subject, is that we seem to have this obsession with technology and social media and digital marketing and Google AdWords and all these platforms. But what we fail to focus on is the psychology. So I very much want to term the mantra of psychology before technology. So what I'm saying by that is companies obsess so often about the medium or the channel, but they don't obsess about the message or the content. And they're more concerned about the platform or the content than the purpose of the content. Back to that, who and why and what we're doing that content for. So in order to create content, we really need to appeal to the psyche of our customers at a deep, deep level. We need to understand what's happening in their lives. What are the things and factors causing their biggest fears or frustrations? Who are they looking to advise? Where are they searching and searching out for information? And what questions or conversations are they having with themselves? That last point is really, really key. We need to be able to influence and infiltrate by connecting with the conversations our customers have. That's where the best marketing messages work. So this one is really, over the last year, I instigated a pretty strict no news, no Netflix diet. I actually sit here at this kitchen table, read the books, do the research, do the literature reviews, and I have basically gorged myself, become a bit of a learning junkie, and I've really enjoyed it, formed a powerful habit. And the biggest breakthrough is understanding we all need, as marketers, to become pragmatic psychologists. We need to understand what our customers are thinking, feeling, saying, and doing. We need to get inside their minds. The best, most professional marketers understand their market better than they know themselves. Big challenge, but very, very important. So we don't have to be mind readers these days to work out what our customers are thinking and feeling, what they're searching, and the language and the words and the terminology and the phrases they're using, because we can use tools like Google Console or SME Rush. I suggest you have a look at both of those. I use SME Rush a lot with our clients. What we can do is we can find out high volume keywords, because we don't need a brain scanner or an MRI machine to tell us what our customers are looking for. We can actually go on the internet and actually see who's searching for what terms. And then very simply, we can then match our content to include those terms, include those areas that they're activated and they're motivated and triggered about. So this is a massive breakthrough for me. It's very, very important I get this point across to you, that we must focus on the psychology, the message, before the technology or the medium. Now, another thing that I promise you that I've put a lot in here, and I hope you're scribbling away, I hope this is all making sense for you, is a very simple formula here of, we often talk about value propositions, and they sound pretty funky and pretty clever, and we all like to sound intelligent. But the reality is, your proposition is a truth, and it's a proof. And so what I want to talk about is the formula I use with clients is, we will dig deep and we'll do our homework. We'll talk to the staff, we'll talk to the dealerships, we'll talk to the farmers and use and observation. And we want to go deep down to find the product truth. The problem, what happens is, marketers are sometimes very shallow, very superficial. It's done at the face value, and we're not really digging deep to find that fundamental product truth. Every product has a truth, just like any business, just like any person. And once we found that truth, we need to back it up with proof. And that proof can come in the form of customer case studies, testimonials, or demonstration days. And so when we combine the truth and the proof, it gives us the trust. And the trust is where the purchase happens. And these things are very, very powerful as a combination. And it's very, very important. And I kind of use the analogy of tennis balls here, that you can throw lots of tennis balls at someone, but they're only going to be able to really catch one or two. And so when you say everything, no one remembers anything. So when you say everything, people remember nothing, is what I should say. And the same thing happens with marketing. Singular messages work well. And this product proposition is why it's so, so important. So you think about Volvo, they stand for safety. Disney, fun. Harley Davidson, rebellion. Apple, innovation. We need to find, I'll ask you guys, what's the single fundamental truth about your particular product, whether it's a tedder, a raker, or a tractor, or an implement? What is it? And two companies cannot own the same word in the market's mind. And what I mean by that is, I'll give you some examples. Like FedEx owns the concept of overnight in the market's mind. When you think about brands, it's about owning a unique position in the market's mind. Now, FedEx owns overnight, whereas DHL is worldwide. And a real classic, the Energizer Bunny, the batteries, Energizer batteries. This Energizer pink bunny has been trying to outdo the long-lasting concept of Duracell for years and years and years. Now, Duracell is actually a great name because it actually implies the longevity and the long-lasting nature of those batteries. And then Burger King have been forever epically failing to try and take on the word fast food for McDonald's, who just own it in their entirety. So my advice to you is, you can only own one singular concept. You only one position in the market's mind. And you know, retailers that are in most trouble these days are generalists, a bit like the unisex hair salon. Because they serve everyone, they serve no one. And it's like the department store, the store that sells everything to everyone. They end up having to compete on price, generalists, because there's nothing else to differentiate themselves. They have to use price as their point of difference rather than the segment that they serve. So everyone's interested in what's new, and few are interested in what's better. So yeah, you know, we're interested in new things. We territory scan, we look for things. Why is it different? Why is it unique? Why have I not heard of it before? Just because it's better doesn't necessarily cut through. So think about truth and proof equaling trust. Now, another equation I stand for here is, we talk again about product propositions here, but then we talk about collectively, a value equation here of, and there's three things that happen in a buying process. First and foremost, subconsciously from our caveman brains, and I haven't got time to talk about the triune brains and why we have a reptilian brain, a mammal brain, and a human brain. But we make decisions emotionally first and foremost, and then we justify them rationally or functionally. And then most importantly, then we will find out and then prove, can we afford it? Can we buy it financially? So what I want to talk about here is the idea here of you want to get an idea of a house. You're buying a house, and you'll go along with your wife, and there'll be a lovely feel about it. There's light coming through the windows. It's space. It's airy. There's an indoor-outdoor flow. These are all emotional drivers. And then functionally, you'll start looking for it, and you go resale value, renovation potential, location. Is it close to the good schools? And then you'll look at the financial, can we afford it? And more often than not, if you're good with your bank, you probably find a house that you really want, and then you'll go and ask the bank to lend you the money to get that house. Very much decisions are made emotionally, then justified financially, and then functionally, and then financially. And we get this so wrong, where we often lead with the financial and the functional before we lead with the emotional. Consumers buy emotionally. Even farmers, we know farmers are the most emotional customers on this planet. All you have to do is ask them about their farm, how long it's been the generation, what that farm, what those animals, and what their family means to them. Very, very emotional types, and it's very, very important that we recognise this and we're sensitive and respectful of that. So another thing that we need to sort of do is we need to shift mindsets, and we need to focus on, we need to stop having this seller mindset where we're selfishly servicing our own needs. And we need to focus on a buyer mindset, because as far as I know, no one sells something until someone buys. So often we're so busy selfishly servicing our own needs, like we've got to make the sale, make the quota, the month end, the quarter target. And customers pick up on this subliminally and subconsciously. We can actually measure this, that their parasympathetic nerve system actually spikes because of loss aversion. Because what is this? So what's the natural reaction we all have when a salesperson comes to see us? Oh, what are they going to sell us now? What are they going to sell us that I don't want? They're going to sell me something I don't need. So that parasympathetic, that central nervous system needs to be disarmed, and we need to bring it down, calm it down, so that customer feels safe and secure, and they're much more receptive to receiving our message. So again, we need to flip things. We need to be focused on servicing the needs of our customers rather than servicing the needs of ourselves. And I've kind of encapsulated this as serve to sell. Much like we lead nurture with emails, you know, we breadcrumb, we provide information that's really, really useful for customers. And they go, gee, that guy or girl, they're really good. They give me a lot of information to help me make accurate and informed decisions. I'm going to give them a go because they've helped me. So it's about time I help them. This weapon of influence, reciprocation, is a very, very important one. So it's very important in this buying mindset process that we play the long game. And one of my favorite questions I like to challenge my clients when we're thinking about the marketing and thinking about it is, what are they buying and why should they buy? So often the conversation is about us selling, and we've got to sell this, and we've got to sell that. We're talking about we, and we're not talking about me or me-mail or the customer. Like, what's going inside that customer's mind? It's back to that psychology versus technology. What are they thinking and feeling? What are they saying and doing? And how can we influence and infiltrate and better understand the conversations those customers are having with themselves? So when we calm down the customer's central nervous system, that parasympathetic nervous system, they're going to feel much more safe and secure. And they're going to realize and recognize that we're trying to actually serve them rather than sell to them. And it's a very, very important distinction. Now, another trick that we've learned along the lines, we employed this very effectively with Vodafone Rural. They got some record numbers for RBI connections. Often we train sales teams in rural, and we do sales optimization and sales observation days. And I hear territory managers going, oh, my territory, it's too big, it's bloody enormous. Well, that's easy. We break it down a bit like the elephant. We take it one bite at a time, or one hoof at a time. So we would go around Southland and we'd break it down into Gore and Dipton and Tapanui and Nightcaps and Matara and Winton. And we'd make sure that we heat mapped and work through influences and customer density and all these different data points and layers to work out and identify where the regions or districts that we needed to go first. And then when we focus on those districts, we could focus on those driveways. So deploying a district driveway strategy has been a very, very effective and efficient way of deploying our marketing dollars. We were rewarded because we do our homework. We know the areas that have the data which we need, and you can employ this for yourself. It's really working out who the influencers are, what your customer density is. Maybe you've got dealerships in the area, what your regional community sponsorship commitments have been. Maybe you've had rural press. It's a lot of things. Again, that value equation where we're really circling the wagons in a nice way around those areas, and we really own those territories. And when I think about territory managers, I always like to think that a true territory manager owns and knows their territory. So district driveway strategy works very well. If you want to know more, please get in touch. We've got lots of data on this that helps a lot of our clients. So most importantly, really, we're just making sure with customers here that we're showing them that we know them and we know what's important to them, rather than this sort of shotgun approach. We're very much a sniper versus a shotgun approach. We're very, very accurate on where we spend and where we target. Now I'm going to come back to content and what makes content contagious. And this is a great book. I've got some brilliant books of recommended reading to share at the end of the presentation. This is Jonah Berger's brilliant book called Contagious. And he talks about 6 things that make content contagious. And the first one he talks about is social currency. Now, often we will share things that make us look good or put us in a positive light. That's why we put pictures of us presenting at conference, or I was honoured and privileged to speak at this conference, which I won't be doing. But it's more around putting together things that make your customers look good. That is our job. And then the other thing is around this triggers or activation or arousal. And I know that sounds a bit weird to say on a Friday afternoon here, but you need to make sure you trigger your customers into action. We need to use emotion to motivate. So Jonah here talks about top of mind, tip of tongue. Very nice sort of wordplay there, lovely fluency. And then about the emotion. When we care, we share. So when something moves us, we're more likely to share it and provide, make it public. So again, making things public rather than private, built to show, built to grow. So when we make public commitments, we're far more likely to follow through on them. I love this one, news you can use. So essentially, create content that is news that people can use, your customers can use. Like, make sure it's valuable, it's unique, it's practical, it's applicable. There's immediacy to it. They can apply it to their business. And I hope some of the ideas and insights we're sharing this afternoon, you can apply to your business. And then stories as well, that, you know, no one remembers data points or PowerPoint slides. Everyone can recall a story, and a story is like a vessel. It can carry a message. So brilliant book that you should go and buy. Jonah Berger, Contagious. I've got a list of other books at the end of the presentation, so hang in there. Make sure you scribble them down, and I obviously leave a copy of this presentation for Ron. So I'm going to show you now a video which is called Will It Blend? And it's a fantastic video. I think this one got 12 million views. And I'm just going to sort of play it to you. Hopefully the audio comes through okay. But it just shows how this is kind of really clever content that has become very contagious.
Will it blend? That is the question. By popular demand, today we're going to do the crowbar. Okay, all right. Whose cell phone? I warned you. No cell phones. I warned you. If I heard one cell phone, we'd blend it. Up, cameraman, Kells. No holdouts here. All right. Cell phone smoke. Don't breathe this. Can you hear me now?
So you kind of get the idea. I mean, this guy's not going to win an Oscar, but you know, it's been terrifically profitable for this company, and they've sold so many blenders as a result of it. You know, they've blended iPhones, crowbars, kitchen mixers, all sorts of things. But anyway, you know, 12 million views, amazing, great example, contagious content. Now the next concept I want to share with you about is this sort of 5-legged stool. I'm recording this in my kitchen. I can look at a kitchen stool across the way here. Now, when we talk about lead generation and building your list, which is one of your most biggest assets, an email list of your customers' details, think of that as the seat to your stool, and the legs are the content channels that feed it. And there's a sort of codependency again between the seat of the stool that holds the legs together and the fact that the legs actually keep the seat in place. So what I want you to think about is a really simple concept here is that if you only have one leg to your stool and you get that kicked away, so say you've just got an over-reliance or over-dependency on Facebook for your main digital marketing message, that goes away, you've got no more leads. You've got no more ability to communicate and connect with your customers. So we need to have multiple legs to our stool. So I've given you some ideas here. I have an email automation software that I can customize and send out, and I can test headlines and times a day and times. I blog regularly. I have a website with some cheat sheets and some resources. I'm on LinkedIn and Facebook, and then I run a podcast, and occasionally I do a webinar as well. And I try, although builder's house, I try to have a minimum of 3 legs to my stool at any one time. Now, every company is going to be different, and you're going to have different sort of channels as your legs here. But what I recommend you do, you must have a minimum of 3 legs to have stability to your stool, which is your customer lead generation. So if you're not generating enough leads, it's because you haven't got enough legs. And when you're not making enough leads, then your pulse, your pipeline hasn't got a pulse, and you've got to get a defibrillator on it. So the more legs you have, the more diversity you're managing the risk of your lead generation. So I think you get the idea here. Don't have a pogo stick. Don't have one leg. Have many legs. Ideally 3. Even better, try and have 5. A simple concept, but great execution. Here's an example of a 5-legged stool. This is a company I used to work for over in Australia, and they evaluate ad agencies and profit multiples and overhead multiples, a company called Trinity P3. And here they've done a great example for us of a 5-legged stool with a blog, a podcast, a register for new agencies, a YouTube channel where they interview industry leaders, and then they have a resource rate calculator app. So 5 legs to the stool. Brilliant example here of 5 lead generating channels that are delivering qualified leads into their system. Now, David Ogilvy, one of the original Mad Men, he talks about the importance of headlines. And I just want to sort of touch on this a wee bit because it's incredibly important. It's sort of an art and a science, headlines. And he says, on average, 5 times as many people read the headline as read the body copy. When you've written your headline, you spend 80 cents out of your dollar. So basically, people read what they need, and headlines are critical for them as a navigation to say, is this worth reading? And if we don't get those words right, there are different tests on word count, a number of letters, which I don't have time to go into, but the difference between getting a headline right and getting a headline wrong is 10 times the response rate. So it really, really pays to test your headlines. So my advice to you is you test, and you test again until you find the right headline that works for you. So the technical term for it is split control test. We can test blog headlines. We can test website headlines. We can test email subject lines. Very, very important. And another thing that's really, really important, and I'm trying to share everything I possibly can with you here because to compensate for the fact I'm not physically there with you this afternoon, is Robert Collier is a 19th century copywriter, and I've been reading a lot of his books, and I get coached offshore, and he keeps coming up all the time again. And I wrote a recent blog about this, where it's really important that we enter the conversation that the customer's having with themselves. Always enter the conversation already taking place in the customer's mind. Why so much rural marketing is so average and so mediocre and so lame is because they're talking about themselves and they're not talking about the conversations customers are having with themselves. It's great advice, and we often, because of our own egos, we impose our own worldview on our customers, and we don't use the exact words, vocabulary and conversations our customers are having and using. It's so, so important we use the exact same words that our customers are using, because when we do that, we cut through and we connect, because they understand me, they get me, they're just like me, and they understand how I'm thinking and feeling and the words and the language that I use in my tribe. So this all sounds like common sense, but as we say, common sense isn't that common. And we like to get clever. We got what I call complexity bias. We try to make things more complicated than they need to be. So really what we need to do is just get inside the worlds of our customers. And a bit like when we sell, if we're talking, when we're learning less about our customers' world. So take the time, do the diligence, do the homework to understand what are the words, phrases, terminology, language that your customers use, and reflect it in your marketing messages. Can't stress this one enough. So how do you create content that connects? We talked about serving to sell. Killer content serves and crap content sells. It's useful rather than useless. It's specialized. Don't underestimate the granularity and specificity, specific content. Think about when you're searching for something or you're trying to fix your dishwasher or washing machine, you'll put in the model number and the name and the year. You're very, very specific with your words. No different with your marketing. Quality, not quantity, consistent, not ad hoc, and emotional, not rational. Remember, we've got to trigger and activate our customers. If they're not responding to your marketing, it's because we haven't understood their psyche, we haven't understood the conversations they're having, and we really need to get emotionally into their heads and their hearts so we get their hands, I purchase. Now, motion, I mentioned motion being very, very powerful, and a lot of you might be going, oh, no, I'm not emotional, I make rational decisions, everything else. Absolute rubbish. We do make our decisions emotionally. Think about cars you buy, the status, the badge, the fitness signals that sends to others in our community. Everything we buy, we are sending a signal to people. In order for your content to connect with people, we have to move them emotionally. People are moved by their emotions. So even if you look at the word emotion, it has the word motion in it, or motivation. So whenever I talk about emotion, link it with motivation. So we are moved and motivated by our emotions. They're fear, joy, sadness, anger, loss, awe, anxiety, hope, pride, disgust. These emotions cause them to actively seek out and search for content that meets that specific need at that time. We're emotional beings with thoughts and feelings, and we often rationalize when we really need to think about how a customer's feeling as opposed to how they're thinking. We've got a caveman brain, and whether it's sense of belonging, status, significance, or survival, these are basic human needs. So back to that psychology, think about why we do what we do, why we buy, and think about a time you were last emotionally activated or triggered. There would have been a trigger event that caused it. Maybe someone cut you off on your way to your commute. Maybe someone was really rude to you on the phone, or a music jogged you of a memory, or a smell reminded you from your childhood, or maybe you walked into that dream house and you had to have it. Would it have been an emotional trigger? So there's lots of things to think about here, but as in, we need to make sure we don't live in a rational world. We focus on the emotional. I haven't got time to cover this, but you can read that in the presentation. I want to emphasize here that we get obsessed about social media and digital media, but email and blogs still kick ass. And one of the biggest lists, if you haven't got that already, one of the biggest assets you can have in your marketing armory is to have your email list of your customers' email addresses. Every communication should be good enough to exchange email. If it's not, then your content's not good enough. I use automated email software like Drip or MailChimp, and you can customize your emails to go out with workflows in the middle of the night as you're training salespeople. So it's working while you're sleeping, and allows you to build and nurture that relationship. So I want you to think about a boxer rather than the knockout blow or getting married on the first date. It's a jab, it's a jab, it's a jab, and then it's a hook, or in my case, I've just done an uppercut. But think about it. You do not sell on the first date. You don't get married on the first date. You need to nourish and nurture that relationship. Email is a beautiful way of doing that. Blogs are a great tool too, because they build more pages than Google. They build more pages that Google can index and rank, making more relevant. So the more pages you have on your site, i.e. blog pages, the more pages you're going to get listed on Google, and you've got the better chance of influencing and infiltrating search terms. Now, Google, I've done a podcast on this. You'll find it on the website on content marketing, and I work with one of the first content agencies that was accredited by Google. Google will punish and penalize lazy sites that don't publish regularly. So if your site is static, and Google will often go around with their bots every few weeks, and they'll look at the HTML on the back, and they'll see if your website has been changed lately, or have you added more content. If you haven't, it will push you lower. It will push you lower if your website's really slow to load. It will push you lower if your website doesn't perform on mobile. You need to be an authority site or an authority business, and Google will roll and rank you based on your relevance. So really remember, emails It's still 70% of our business communication. It's our primary business communication channel, and we ignore it at its peril. And blogs work for search engine optimization in Google. So they're beautiful things. Again, can't stress how important they are in your armory. So just a quick stat for you, just running out of time here, but companies that blog have 434% more index pages than businesses without blogs. As you publish more content, Google will continue to increase your page rank, making it easier for customers to find you. So when they're searching for things, and we've done our homework using those tools, we will be more likely to intercept those searches with our pages. Now I'm going to give you a treat here, guys, a bit of a present. I want all of you to go away and think about a blog. And I want you to write a blog, and I'll be looking out for it, 3 mistakes new farm owners make when choosing tractor size. Now, I'm going to tell you why this works. Humans hate making mistakes. So we've got this thing called the loss aversion principle, which is Daniel Kahneman's book, Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow. We are twice as motivated to avoid loss than we are gain. And because of this, we hate making mistakes, and we like to learn from others. We are very curious creatures as humans, so we often will adapt and learn by observation. And we have an insatiable appetite to learn and be educated. In some cases, we like to get our status and our significance in our caveman caves by learning more than someone else. And we want to be seen as making good, accurate decisions. We're talking about that, Jonah Berger, talking about making things that look in a positive light. That is a fundamental human need and driver and motivation. And we don't want to be portrayed in baller. Anything that reflects us badly, we will repel. It's the enemy. And we also like our actions and behaviors to be seen by others as smart and well-informed. We want to look like we're smart. So this is a great thing because it talks about mistakes, which triggers loss aversion in your customer's mind. We've been very specific here about new farm owners, the specific market they want to talk to, and then specifically the subject around choosing tractor size. Okay, so give that a crack. If you want to email it through to me or before you publish it, feel free to, but that will work beautifully for you. I can assure you of that for these reasons. So remember, content's king. I know I've stressed and milked the whole concept of content a lot, but content's king in your marketing. And think about content rather than advertising and marketing. Think about being content creators. Try and create more content that you consume. Be mindful of the content that you consume. Make sure it's nutritious. And then make sure also that consistency is key. So I'll give you an example. I could go to the gym and flog myself for 8 hours, but I wouldn't get fit. But if I was consistent, so that was intensity. If I went to a gym for 20 minutes 3 times a week, that would be consistency and that would get me a result. So if, for instance, if I only went to the dentist twice a year, that would be intensity. But if I actually brush my teeth morning and night, like I tell my children to, and I do my work, that consistency wins. So if you're going to create content and commit to content, my advice is, make sure content is definitely king, but consistency is key. Consistency beats intensity every single time. So near the end here, guys, recommended reading, real classic books here. It's the old 80-20 rule. I've read hundreds of business books, psychology, social science books, and I've got more book breakdowns on my website if you want to see and learn more. Jack Trout, he had a brilliant book called Positioning. There's another great book called The 22 Immutable Laws of Marketing. Contagious by Jonah Berger, we referenced that earlier. Made to Stick, which is about messages that stick and decision-making by Chip and Dan Heath. Influence, one of the best books I read on influence. As in, I think we're in the business of influencing, not advertising. So Professor Robert Cialdini, he spent 20 years studying influence as a discipline. And then there's a brilliant book on selling by Neil Rackham, which is situational, problem, implication, and needs-based. Brilliant books. And as I teach this stuff, I do courses on it, but I always say to my students, you've got to read it, you've got to review it, and you've got to renew it. Because if not, we can, through Ebbinghaus curve, we can really lose the learning that we attain decays and deteriorates very, very quickly. So summary, I know there's a lot there. I promised to give you a lot because I can't actually be there in person, which again, I really apologize for, but I hope I've made up for it by giving you some really good tools to apply to your business. So most importantly here, we need to connect with the conversations customers are having with themselves. Use me language, not we language. When you read books or a newspaper or magazine article, have a look at a paragraph and see how often they use the words you and your. It's absolutely prolific in that paragraph. You'll see you and your. So use those words. Remember, me language, not we language. Create more than you consume. if you want to be authority. Really, really simple to like and share stuff. But rather than consume that content, be a creator of content. And remember to have that three-legged stool, at least a three-legged stool, preferably a five-legged stool, so your stool has stability for your lead generation. Email is still our primary business tool, primary business communication. 70% of all business communication on email. So email along with blogs are your most effective content channels for that search engine optimization and Google benefit I spoke about. Content doesn't equal Facebook. If I was you, forget Facebook, get on email, get on blogs, and look at your owned and your earned media, not just your paid. So again, I've talked about owned and earned media and paid, and then that pincer movement of using advertising content and editorial content, particularly if you want to get more coverage. Remember to serve to sell, and remember that educational based content will always win. You out-teach to outsell. Influence the influencers. Focus on Tom from Tapanui, the alpha farmer, and remember that word of witch mouths are better than word of mouth. Deploy that district driveway strategy. Use those data points to understand where those districts are going to work for you best. And finally, make sure that you become that pragmatic psychologist. It's so, so important that we focus on the psychology before the technology. Let's focus on the content and the message before the medium or the channel. So I really appreciate it, guys. I'm just going to, I think I've put some questions together because I know if I've been there live, you would ask some questions, but I've done my homework. I hope that you guys in the room there, some of these questions are going to answer those. Maybe one of the first questions you're asking is, should I still be using Facebook? Well, yeah, I think you should be using Facebook, but use it sparingly with unique content. Now, you've got to diversify into other channels too. So again, that 3 to 5 legged stool tool kicks in again. Yeah, use Facebook, but make sure it's not your only leg. And what about Google AdWords? Well, I've done a very long podcast on my Agrarian website with a very, very good specialist, first accredited Google content strategist in New Zealand. We talked about this a lot. A lot of you are getting, I think, really, really poor advice and irresponsible advice around Google AdWords. If you're building up your SEO, you've got to remember that every click costs when you pay for Google AdWords. And the problem is a lot of you will be in contention and bidding in auctions for specific keywords or tractor sizes. And that makes it really, really expensive. So every time you get a click, it's going to cost you. So organic content through blogs and using the words that your customers and the conversations they're having, that will earn your ranking through relevance rather than buy it. And remember that 26% of customers don't trust banner ads. And I think 30% don't even click on sponsored ads. Should I still advertise in rural media publications? The answer is yes. Rural media publications still have a role to play. They're very well read. Those readership surveys back that up. But no, don't just offer them advertising, offer them stories because they need content too. There'll be guys like Ted at Rural News and others who are looking for content that is useful, generous, and valuable. And so provide that as well as your advertising. Another thing, if you're sitting there and, you know, and I know I've covered a lot here, but if you were to advise me to do one thing, what would it be and why? Know your customers at a deeper psychological level. We need to do our homework, do our diligence. Think about what they're doing, why they're doing it, and the conversations they're having with themselves. It's really, really important to do your research. Don't be shallow. Don't be superficial. Don't take the shortcuts. Don't be lazy. Go deep, and then you'll be rewarded for it. Now, what other media would you suggest I use? Well, I want you to think about affiliates, strategic partners, or influencers who already have a similar list of customers or a database that's very similar to you that you're not in competition with, and reach out to them and speak to them and say, can we do something together? And, you know, maybe you've got to sort out a commercial arrangement. That's your business, not mine. And then the benefit of that is you don't have to start from scratch. You've already got a list that you've already got there. And how do I know my marketing is working? Well, as they say, what you don't measure, you don't manage. So set unique reference codes or 800 numbers on your direct marketing. Test and test and test again. It's very important that everything you're doing, you should be measuring. Now, obviously, digitally, it's much more able to do that. But where you can, you need to measure and you need to put those metrics in place, create those dashboards. So unique reference codes or different 800 numbers to see which ads are working or not. Very important things. So there we have it, guys. Just short under the hour. I'm sorry I went on for a little bit longer. I hope I haven't bored you to tears. I hope there's a lot of information, that ideas and insights that you can apply to your businesses, your tractor and machinery businesses. Again, I apologise for not being there. It's out of my hands, but I hope this has given you a lot to think about, and I hope you had a brilliant day at conference. I hope you've enjoyed listening to your speakers, including Cameron Baggery. You'll be in for a real treat with Paddy Gower in the evening, and I wish you all the very best. And if you want to talk about anything that I've covered today and this afternoon, then Ron will have my details and our websites there. So thank you very much for listening to me, and we wish you all the very best.